All right, everyone, welcome back to the Sort of Strongman podcast. My name is Isaac Rogers, joined as always by my co-host Brandon Jordan. Brandon, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I had deadlifts today. I pulled 700 last week. I couldn't feel better. Got 6 weeks until nationals.
6 weeks. That is not a very long time. Sounds like a lot of time, but if you can, do you guys do like 4 week blocks usually, or is it usually a
Yeah,
6 week
yeah, we
block?
do 4 week blocks, but I don't think one 4 week block will catch me up to DJ Dog it. So
I mean, you never know. You can fit a lot of steroids into a 4 week block, so yeah. Anyway, the topic that we want to cover today is a pretty big one, a pretty meaningful one, and it's spectatorship in the sport of strongman. We think that there are a lot of things that are done quite wrong by a lot of the major shows, especially, but sometimes at the local level as well, that can be improved on with some pretty minor fixes. So, this is another one of the topics that we have talked about long before we even thought about starting any sort of podcast about this. So, again, if you guys have any input once we're done with this, then feel free to leave it in the comments. We love having conversations with you guys. And with that said, let's jump right into it. So, the first thing that I wanted to cover is what I think some of the major shows do right and what I think some of the major shows do wrong, starting with the Arnold Classic. I think that one of the things that the Arnold does really well is it's a very big and open arena, and it's a very larger than life experience. If you've ever been there, I know Brandon's been there. I've been there. I was in there 2024. The back of my phone case has the ticket from when Hafthor Bjornsson pulled 1,000 pounds on the elephant bar deadlift, which was quite the experience. And so I think that with the big stands, the lighting that they have, all those big iconic events, I think that's a positive for the Arnold, and I think that's one of the major factors as to why people still enjoy viewing the Arnold. And any thoughts on that before we move on to the cons?
yeah. So I've been to the Arnold every year since 2022. It was actually my first experience in strongman. We walked in right after JF Caron dropped the log on himself.
Oh
That
yeah,
was my
forgot about that.
That was my very first time seeing strongman at all.
Mhm.
Um, still have photos on my phone of me in the background of all these shots of the Arnold. Like, oh, here's me in my red shirt doing this.
Yeah.
We didn't go this last year because I was volunteering for the pro am,
Mhm.
and I think the Arnold, like you said, they do a great job with letting you be close. I've been to a lot of the majors. Well, I've been to two of them, but I've been multiple times to both of them.
Yeah, that's half.
That's half
At
of
this
them. Yeah,
point,
yeah.
it's 65%.
But they let you are close. Like it's
Mhm.
easy to the guys will come out after day one. They'll come out in between events if they're kind of more relaxed. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You can just go talk to them. Like after Inez, sorry Inez, but after she smashed her face into the frame, my fiance was in the bathroom and she came out of the stall. And Inez was like in the wiping blood off of her face in the bathroom sink, and she was like, "Oh God, like what do I like? What do I say? What do I do?" Um,
Yeah.
but it's the best one at making you realize how big these guys are and how big
Yeah.
these guys and women are.
Yeah, I think that one of the major things that the Arnold has always had is the crowd size, because obviously it's at the Arnold Expo. And I love watching the videos from like 2019, 2018, where they were just on the expo stage. I know that's not really practical anymore because of how it's grown and the fact that you can make so much more money off of it if it's in that back room. I just think there was a certain charm to that smaller stage, all the athletes being out on the stage, all that big crowd energy in the wide open expo center. I think that's something that they do really well. And I think one of the only cons to the Arnold is just the ticket price to get in, because not only do you need a specific strongman show ticket, you need an expo ticket also. So over the course of a weekend, as of this last year when I priced it out, it was going to be like a few $100s minimum for just Friday and Saturday, which is okay for some people, but I think for the general fan to get into the sport, I think that the in-person viewing experience of the Arnold could use some work. We're not really going to talk about the live stream of each competition right now because that's kind of a different topic. It's a little bit included, but right now we're focusing on the in-person spectatorship. So I loved watching the Arnold. I thought it was great. The energy in the room is always great, especially because of how prestigious of a title it is. And the pacing could be better. I don't think it's quite as bad as some of the other majors, and I like that they are including the women's events in between the men's events, the same way the Rogue does to an extent. I like that quite a bit, especially as a fan of the strong woman side of the sport. I love seeing them getting their at least as close to equal publicity as the men. Because unfortunately, a lot of people use that as their, oh, I'm going to go get food, I'm going to go take a break and go to the bathroom time. But I think that as the sport grows, as the sport grows, I think that more people are going to realize that the women's side of the sport is just as entertaining as the men's side, and I think that that's something that Arnold does really well.
Yeah, and I don't know if you follow Brian Masters on Instagram. He's like kind of like the head guy for the Arnold Expo.
Hmm.
He announced this year that, or he announced this year that for next year they're adding Thursday. So Thursday
Oh,
for the VIP tickets, which a lot of the tickets for Strongman have like the Strongman VIP option. That's what I
yeah,
used to get was like the silver VIP or the gold VIP.
right.
But the problem is with the Strongman stuff, it was all day Friday and
Hmm.
Saturday. You would have maybe like 30 to 35 minutes to
Hmm.
run around the entire expo because you would get in early and try to buy or get as much free energy drinks as you wanted. And then you
Hmm.
got stuck in this back area.
Yeah.
Um, because it's a hike to because you have to go all the way out and around.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's one of the big. It's a good and a bad because people hear of the strongman, and especially on Sunday, the strongman are walking around the expo.
Hmm.
But I remember, was it 23? The year they had the Stein Tossing event. I was just,
Yeah,
I was
23.
just, yeah, I was just walking around, and Tom Evans is just walking around, and no one's talking
Hmm.
to him because no one
Yeah.
knows because he's stuck back there. As opposed to if he's on the big stage, which, like you said, isn't practical anymore. But
Hmm.
if he's on the big stage, people are like, "Oh, yeah, this guy's 6'5". He weighs
Hmm.
360 pounds.
Yeah, he's
Clearly,
huge.
and he was just on the stage. Clearly, I want to go take a photo with this guy."
Yeah, you see someone walking around in an Arnold classic tank top, and if they look like they were on the strongman stage, chances are they were on the strongman stage, which is a funny part about the Arnold specifically with the athletes walking through and everything, is they turn heads at the Arnold. Like if you I've heard multiple pro guys say that if you want to feel like a celebrity in the sport of strongman, go to the Arnold because people will know you. Maybe a few years ago it wasn't quite as big, but this year at the Arnold, from what I heard, it was hard for some of these guys to even just get through the expo,
Yeah.
which is a good and a bad because that means that the strongman side of things is growing. But I think that's one of the things that's really fun about the Arnold is the face to face with the athletes a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I think the booths do a great job too. Like SBD, Rogue, Airwave, Zone Smelling Salts. They do a great job of like, hey, like Zone, Aaron Murray's going to be here at this time, or
Hmm.
like Sam Beliveau is going to be here at this time, and then Rogue, it's like Thor's going to be here, or he'll be at the Rain booth or whatever. There's so many opportunities for you to just go up and meet these guys at a scheduled time, as
Right.
opposed to like Worlds, where it's like, oh, you just got to run into it. You just got to get lucky and run into them. There's
Coincidentally,
set,
yeah.
yeah, there's no set time for you to go
Hmm.
talk to them.
Hmm.
But all in all, I think the Arnold's is consistently just like out of the top majors. If I was to give a letter grade, I think
Hmm.
it's the only one that's solidly an A plus
Yeah.
because Columbus is not super expensive to fly into.
Hmm.
It's Columbus. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I'm wearing a
Hmm.
shirt I actually got at the Arnold. I'm
Yeah.
not trash talking you, Columbus, Ohio.
Ohio gang.
It's Columbus, Ohio. I mean, world's strongest man is in tourist destinations. I mean, Myrtle Beach is cheap to get to. We'll get on that later.
Yeah.
But like Rogue is in Scotland. If you're American, not
Hmm.
cheap.
No.
The Shaw Classic was
Yeah.
in Loveland, Colorado, not super cheap. But
Hmm.
Columbus, there's a major airport right there. There's
Yeah.
hotels. The Arnold books out all the hotels too that are in the
Hmm.
area, so you get them for a discounted rate. There's good food nearby. I've never had a bad experience at the Arnold. I've never felt like, oh
Yeah.
man, I wasted my money or I spent too much money doing this.
Yeah, and an added benefit of the Arnold Pro is that with the Expo ticket, you can see the amateur show for free, which is nice, which helps grow the sport. That's another one of the things that gets some of the most views in the Expo itself. Like, there's always a crowd next to the Pro Am, which is fun. And I think that it does that a lot better than Worlds, which is the next one we'll get into. Because I think that World's Strongest Man probably has the most negative to it for the fan experience,
I agree.
which is balanced out by the fact that if you win, you're the world's strongest man. So there's still quite a bit of clout and quite
It's
a
the
bit of
biggest title.
anticipation. It's the biggest title of the sport still, and I don't know why people keep trying to debate if another show is going to take it. I don't think it's ever going to be anything but World's Strongest Man. I think World's Strongest Man deservingly is the title in the sport. So some of the pros that I think World's Strongest Man has is that not only do they also have their own set of iconic events like the Arnold, it is a lot of strongman in that 4 or 5 days time. I've never been to Worlds in person, but as somebody who has been, and as somebody I've talked to people who have been there, it's a lot of strongman to watch, even though it's spread out, which we'll get to in a second. It's plenty of strongman, and it's usually in a pretty nice location. So if you can afford to go, it can be a fun little trip. You go, half your day is strongman, half your day is you go somewhere else, hang out, and then that's the trip.
Yeah, yeah. I've been to Worlds twice. Incidentally, both times it was in Myrtle Beach because obviously Isaac and I are both in North Carolina now, so it was a quick
Mm-hmm.
drive down there. 2023, I went by myself. Um, that was kind of boring if you go by yourself.
Yeah,
That was the latter year too. Not ladders and with the T's, but ladders with the D's.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
if you were watching
yeah. The
Strongman, that's what.
infamous, yeah, ladders at World's
Yeah.
Strongest Man.
But we went. My fiance and I went this year, and I had. And again, this might be because I'm of drinking age, which we'll get to. But they had right outside because there's like a little vendor village kind of thing, and we were talking to some of the food trucks there, and they were told that they had to pay $150 a day to have stuff there. I don't know if
Hmm.
they were intending to have like an expo style thing like the Arnold's. Um,
Hmm.
but if you went out of the vendor village, there's a bar right across the street. And I
Hmm.
saw a lot of people in the stands who would get drinks there and kind of pre-game worlds, which is something you
Hmm.
can't do at the Arnold. And it
Hmm.
made it so much better. I gotta tell you, I hope my nutritionist doesn't listen to this because he's gonna choke me out. But
Yeah.
for for day one of the finals, when Mitch and Reno started pulling away, there's
Hmm.
a frozen daiquiri place right down the street of Myrtle Beach, and those frozen
Hmm.
daiquiris are pretty strong. And that was that was so cool to
Yeah.
watch because it wasn't super hot out. I had like a big hat that's giving me shade. Definitely was not sober, and that made the experience so much better. It was awesome to see the pros go at it while I was able to have drinks like some car lot strongman show.
Yeah. And definitely hold that thought because we will be getting to that later. That's one of the things that I think can help improve the sport. But to stay on topic, let's round it out with the third major currently. I have some notes on Strongest Man on Earth, what they did right, and in my opinion, what they did wrong, because I did actually go in 2024. Of course, as we've said in every episode so far, rest in peace to the Strongest Man on Earth. I think they did a lot of stuff cool, but the Rogue Invitational, in my opinion, has a very interesting, I don't know how to put this, but like the presentation of it, I can't tell sometimes if I like it or not
Yeah, it's very
because
unique.
it's very cool. Like some of the events that they have there. I mean, you take stuff like the Roga Coaster was awesome when they had that bowl, which they haven't brought back because it almost ended Trey Mitchell's career.
Yeah,
Which I think they should bring it back with a couple modifications. I thought it was awesome. But you get a lot of those really cool events, like the custom Viking press that Jerry Pritchett made for this year's Rogue Invitational was awesome. Those 3 barrels, it was sick. I have not been in person because I couldn't afford to go. Even when it was here in the States, being in Texas, yeah, there's a lot of people in Texas, but it's hard to have a major show in the U.S. that is going to get that many fans because for the same problem as World's Strongest Man is for a lot of people in the country, it can be expensive to fly to where the show is, and with such a with such a nice live stream, a lot of people just prefer to stay home and watch. So I can't really give too many personal notes on the spectatorship of the show, but I think that it's awesome that they used in the past. I think I honestly kind of preferred it in the baseball stadium that they had it in before because I like when a show feels like it has some scale to it, but not too much empty space because I think that's one of the only cons that I can think of the Rogue Invitational from like a presentation standpoint as a viewer. it almost looks too small unless it's one of those events that has like five guys going at the same time, which I think is something that they're nailing. I love watching like the yoke escalator where there's five or even six guys going at the same time. I can't remember which one it is, but those events where it's more than one guy going at the same time and taking up the whole stadium, that's awesome. I think that's cool. But for the individual events like the deadlift or the Viking press, it kind of just feels like there's too much not happening in the stadium.
Yeah, and I think to build on the part, I think head to head is the way to do strongman. It makes it so much cooler. It's so much more
Definitely.
fun to watch. I understand on max events you can't do head to head. I get that. But I think Rogue is doing the best job out of all of the comps as pushing the spectator side. I mean, other than Smo, again, rest in peace. But like the button, Rogue
Hmm.
introduced the button because they heard all these complaints of like, oh, here's the manual
Hmm.
timing issue. So like, all right, you know what? You got to push the button.
The
That's it.
button is so cool. Everyone, all the athletes were like, "Oh, this is annoying" because they've never done this before. And sure, it cost a couple people some placings here and there, like one time I think, but that's so much better because you can't do like most of the events are too like 3D to do any
Like
sort
a
of laser
laser
timing,
time. Yeah, like
which would be awesome. But like for like a yoke, sure you could do that, or like a bag toss if you threw it over and there was a laser on the stand, that would be kind of cool. But like for most of the other ones, if you're done and you hit the buzzer, that's also really entertaining because you can hit it like American Ninja Warrior, where like you hit the buzzer and like there's smoke and
yeah,
like pyro and stuff. That would be sick.
yeah, and then the events too. I mean, the what was it, the yoke and the power stairs event? I mean, I haven't
Hmm.
seen an event that hard in pro strongman, and I mean, I
Yeah,
can't
maybe
remember the last
ever.
time like guys just were dying out there. But
Yeah.
that like the bail push thing too, like that was a weird
Hmm.
event, but it was cool. It was like this is a big thing. I
Hmm.
mean, it kind of stunk because like Reyno's turned on him and that cost him some points. But like you're gonna have these little things happen.
Yeah.
But compared to the Arnold, where it's like, let's try throwing a rock 10 feet.
Hmm.
Like that's okay. You know, okay. Like I
Yeah.
get it. It's like a historical thing. But then you compare it to what the Rogue does, and it's like, hey, we're gonna have four guys going on power stairs at the exact same time, and they're all gonna do a yoke, and they're all gonna be dying on the
Hmm.
steps while one guy is still struggling to finish. It just looks
Yeah.
so much more visually impressive. And then also the prize money. As a fan, I'm so much more invested because I know what it means to these guys to make
Hmm.
that much money. And so it's like awesome. Like every time they win, I'm so excited for him. You know what I mean? So it's like awesome. Like this dude can take the next year and just focus on strongman. I wonder how good he's going to be next year. Whereas I don't have
Exactly.
that thought as much with like the Arnold or Worlds. Yeah, it's great for him. You know what I mean? It's still a heck of a lot of money, but
Hmm.
it's not like, oh yeah, this guy's set for the year,
Yeah.
set for
Which I
2 years.
think. Yeah. Right. I think that's one of the things that I loved this last year about the Rogue on the women's side, especially, is knowing that Inez got the same prize money as the men when she won the Rogue Invitational. I'm like, that's so awesome. Like I felt in that moment that you have to have some emotional tie to the sport you're watching for it to be interesting. And I think that prize money can definitely be one of those things. And I think that one of the major points that I want to make throughout this episode is that I think it's more about the intangible, non-strongman event related things in a venue or in a competition that will make it more entertaining and more enjoyable for a spectator. And before we move on to that next topic, I want to just cover quickly that I think Strongest Man on Earth had one major upside and one major downside. And the major upside was that the events and the equipment that Brian created for Strongest Man on Earth is literally second to none. I've never seen, aside from maybe the Wheel of Pain,
Yeah.
that was nuts. But I mean, you think about the squat machine, the car leg press, the
Like,
keg chest press, the arm over arm event that he had. All of that stuff is so larger than life. And that leads into the con that I think Strongest Man on Earth had. I don't think that it was lit properly, which sounds
really?
like such a small thing. But if you think, like, if you imagine in your head the clips you've seen and all the videos you've seen of the Strongest Man on Earth, imagine it with Giants live lighting, and that show automatically becomes so much more visually entertaining than to me just having a super bright washed out room, aside from like the stands were dimmed a little bit. But it just kind of it feels more amateur to me when a show isn't properly lit. And one of the things is, if it's outside, that's totally different. But inside, I think the Rogue was pretty good about that. Obviously, the field was lit up, but you look and it's like you're not just looking at a whole room of evenly lit stuff. Like I think that a little bit of spotlight action would have been nice. A little bit of like ambient lighting and some dimming on the crowd would have been nice so that it highlights the competition field. Because I think that one of the reason that some of the stuff doesn't look as cool as it could have was just the lighting, and that's one of the things that's possibly just a me thing. But I think that they could have done a lot better job on that. Aside from that, the pacing at Strongest Man on Earth was great. It wasn't too fast. It wasn't too slow. It was a full day of Strongman, but it wasn't too bad. All the events were awesome. All the competitors were having such a good time because, again, there was a lot of money at stake at Strongest Man on Earth, and it was such a heavy title that winning that title almost put you at the level of World's Strongest Man, especially in the community. I feel like there was a mutual understanding that if you won Strongest Man on Earth, you really were the strongest man on Earth, as opposed to World's Strongest Man. You could be like, oh, well, you win Worlds, you can't win anything else. You win Strongest Man on Earth, you're the best strong man in the world.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I haven't been to Smo, but I have friends who have gone and watched, and I have friends who have gone and competed. Um, and I think just to touch on the lighting really quick, if you think about, I've seen the live stream, I paid for the live stream all the years. Think
Mm-hmm.
about the Arnold's lighting, which I think is the best compared to the Shaw lighting. And a lot of that's budget because like the stadium was so big at Smo compared to the Arnold's a little bit smaller, but the Arnold has those massive backlit things with the competitors that show up and it shows their name. And then when they're going, they're making different music. You know what I mean? They're doing walkout stuff like that. And Smo just didn't have that addition to the budget because he was focused on the athlete experience, which I think is incredibly important. Not
Mm-hmm.
saying it's not, but having the big black curtains in the back compared to that takes away visually. And the one thing I have heard from both fans and athletes there was the location of it, as opposed to Worlds where it's like past couple years, Worlds has been in Sacramento, Myrtle Beach. There's airports right nearby, like especially Sacramento. There's one right there. Arnold's is in
Mm-hmm.
Columbus. Rogue is, I mean, in Texas or in Scotland. I've looked into going both times. There's airports within 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But to go to Colorado, you got to fly to Denver. And then Loveland is what, like 2 hours away from Denver? So you got to fly into Denver. You got to rent a car. You got to drive out there, drive 2 hours back to the airport,
Mm-hmm.
and fly out. And that gets to
Yeah.
be expensive. And I understand the prize pool is a lot, especially for the amateur guys. The prize pool is a lot. But if you're an amateur guy and you're not certain you're going to make the finals, that's a lot of money to invest to go to an amateur show as opposed
Yeah.
to doing like the Arnold's or Strongman Core Nationals or OSG, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh yeah, you just fly in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I should have used the Arnold as my example for that lighting because that is definitely, I do agree, Arnold is definitely the best one, especially with the red lighting they've been doing the past few years. I think that's awesome, um, and I think that one of the things that Strongest Man on Earth suffered from, the same as Rogue, is it feels like there's too much space for too small of an activity.
I agree.
Because the biggest thing that the biggest mistake you can use when it comes to a strongman show is not relying on the fact that all of this stuff is larger than life. When you walk, like if I were to stand next to any of those implements, I'd look like this big. But in a big open arena, you're like, that doesn't really
You're
look
looking
like
down at the car
much.
leg press. You're looking down at it from 80 feet in the air,
Hmm.
and it's like, oh yeah, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
it's a car. But if it was at the Arnold, I mean, that ramp at the Arnold is definitely not wide enough for a car. But you see that ramp at the Arnold, like, oh, whoa, that's big. Or even at
Hmm.
Worlds, I mean, we could see like the power stairs. They were right there. The year 2023 when they had those monster dumbbells. I mean,
Hmm.
you could get 20 feet away from them, and I was like,
Yeah.
dude, that thing's bigger than my midsection.
Yeah. It's insane. Like the biggest, like I said, the biggest mistake you can make is ruining the scale of the event, which is one thing that I thought the Rogue used to do, like the Tower of Power at Rogue, where it's that huge like deadlift apparatus that they stand on
Yeah,
top of and they move. I think that Rogue even somehow outscaled that sometimes with how much they were like just in open air the same way because it's Rogue was originally the CrossFit side of things, so they're kind of like still getting their bearing when it comes to the strongman show, but it has its pros and cons, and I think that scale is one of the ones that on the pro level needs to be taken into account more. And on that note, I think that there's some things that both the pro level and the amateur level can do. to make the fan experience more enjoyable. And a little bit potentially of a controversial take here, beer is one of the things that will make any sporting event better. I'm not a huge drinker myself, but I know that I have more fun watching an event if there's a little bit of alcohol involved. And this is obviously not to say you need to get hammered and go crazy at a sporting event like a lot of college football fans do, but there's a reason college football, NFL, NBA fans are absolutely rabid at these events. And I think that not only is it they're just a fan, but the attitude involved in something that has a little bit of food and alcohol involved. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason Strongman started out in beer halls and breweries where it was just a little spectacle for the people to watch. And I think that's one of the things, one of my favorite competitions to watch, specifically the last event of the 2021 Rogue Invitational, the Stones Over the Hitching Post, is in that video, the fans at the end are going absolutely nuts over all these stone over bar results from guys like JF, guys like Martins, especially at the end when he wins and there's the fireworks behind him. People are going crazy. There aren't a ton of people in the stands, and I know for a fact that the fans that were in the stands there are not like diehard strongman fans. They're just fans of sport. And I think fans of sport, if you're going to go to an event, you have to pay for a ticket. You're not going to be able to sit down comfortably. You're going to have to sit down all day, so the pacing is a problem. You're going to have to be sitting either out in the heat or in a big arena that's hot, and you're like, God, I can't even drink a beer while I'm doing this. This sucks. And then at the local level, it's like sometimes the shows are in breweries, or like you go to a convention center and there's nothing. It's kind of bland. Like there's not a ton of energy there. And I think keeping the scale correct, introducing a little bit of food and alcohol, especially, I think that that could fuel a lot more enjoyable of a fan experience than we're seeing at even some of the majors right now.
Yeah, and I have a little story here from my nutritionist. Actually, he won the Ohio Oktoberfest. They have a strongman competition there. And he was talking to me about it, and he was like, "Dude, I've never had that many people watching me before in my entire life, because you have." I mean, he's like, "There's probably 3,000 people total at the Oktoberfest thing, and 2/3 of them will just go get food, and there's this big stage where these guys are lifting, and it's like, hey, I'm gonna sit and have my beer and eat some food. I'm gonna watch this guy lift some big weights." And it's like the Arnold's doesn't have it to where, I mean, there's some places that serve beer in the Arnold, but you have to go all the way out. You have to go all the way around. And if you do that, you're missing the women's events, or you're missing the men's events, depending on when you leave. Or if you leave the weird in between time, which they keep really, really short, you got to sprint.
Yeah.
Worlds, there's never been alcohol in the little vendor village. They had nicotine pouches this year, but obviously it's not the same. Um, and then I'm not certain on the Rogue or Smo, but at least from someone who's been competing in a lot of the amateur shows, my fiance will come and she will bring just a cooler of beer, and it's so much more fun when the crowd gets involved. So it's like I'd rather be competing in front of a bunch of like Oktoberfest. I'd rather be competing in front of 1,000 drunk dads and their families hanging out watching me going nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's the same problem you have with sport right now, to where it's like I go to the SEC championship every year in Atlanta, Georgia. Some years it's really expensive, and people, like regular people who really, really care about it, are getting priced out. And you're
Mm-hmm.
getting people who are just kind of going just to go. I think you get that a lot with the Arnold. You definitely got it with Worlds this year, where a lot of people in the stands weren't really cheering. Like they'd clap, you know what I mean? But like as far
Mm-hmm.
as guys standing up and yelling and going crazy when someone hits a big lift, I felt like, pardon my French, but I felt like an a-hole a lot of times. Like I remember
Mm-hmm.
when Reno hit his after he failed the log at first, then he hit it again.
The 200.
Yeah, the 200.
Yeah.
No one was standing up, and I remember I stood up and I started going nuts. My fiance like pulled my arm. She's like, "You're blocking people's view." But it's like,
Yeah.
why are you here?
You're like,
You
is
gotta
nobody
go
else
nuts.
excited about this? Like, what are you doing here if
Yeah,
you're not
like it
going to
was
get excited?
raining. It was cold. He's fighting Mitch Hooper for this first place spot.
Mm-hmm.
Go nuts. And I
Yeah.
think the pro shows are starting to price people out of going nuts, and the people
Mm-hmm.
that are actually going, they're not getting that social inhibition to go nuts released by that alcohol.
Mm-hmm. I also think that one of the things that I like about, like I said, it's one of my favorite events to watch. The 21 Rogue is it was at night, so there's that feeling of like during the day you're kind of like, okay, sporting event during the day, fun. I'm enjoying watching this. It's a nice afternoon. But a sporting event at night, like I said, college football, college basketball, NBA games, NFL games, they're like starting at like 7 p.m., 8 p.m. sometimes. And you get people, like you said earlier, pre gaming a little bit. Get some dinner in you, get like 2 or 3 hours of like light drinking in you, and you're ready to go. And I think that that's one of the things that you can't really control at like the local level because you kind of have to run the show with what you're given when it comes to the timing of it. But like if these pro events like Giants Live, I think there's a reason the Giants Live crowds are all hype is because you can carry that hype through 3 or 4 hours of competition. You can't keep that energy going all day. Like that's just crazy. Like you can't have somebody sitting in your stands for 8 full hours and expect them to still be cheering like crazy at the end of the day. And I think that's one of the things that pro strongman has become too reliant on the long pace of the day. I know it takes time to set up in between events, but Giants Live has proven it could be a lot quicker than that.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I actually think the 4 day thing for Worlds. I'm actually in favor of that. I know a lot of people don't like it, but a lot of people prefer the 2 day comps. I understand it's on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday now, so you lose some people who can't go to the Thursday, Friday shows. But
Mm-hmm.
Worlds, at least this year and in 2023, did an excellent job of like, hey, here is your break. Go have your break. We will be back on this time. And other than like the stage broke it this year, so obviously got a little bit delayed this year, but that was like
Yeah, thanks,
you
Evan.
can't yeah, he can't control that. You know what I mean? Like it was a freak
Yeah.
accident. He hit a insane like small weak spot. But other than that, they were like really tight on schedule as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to like the Arnolds when I've been or watching the live stream of the Rogue or Smo, especially the Rogue because the CrossFit can take however long. You don't really know when the next event's starting. Even at the Arnold's, like they tell you, like, yeah, the women's event, we're setting up for it. I was like, okay, well, when's that going to be?
Okay.
Like they had the
Yeah.
circus dumbbell last year, and I missed Sam hit the massive circus dumbbell weight because I had no idea when they were starting, and we hadn't eaten the whole day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that like World did a really good job of both years is giving the crowd time to rest as well as the competitor.
Yeah. And I think that kind of rounds out our main thoughts on the spectatorship side of things because a lot of it does come down to what the scale of the show is. The budget that they have can determine a lot about how the show works. But I don't think that there's any reason why they need to keep pacing people out of being interested to watch. Because like I know it's hard for me, the Rogue Invitational. If I'm working a day that has the show, I'm like, I don't really want to miss any of this, but I can't just be sitting watching the live stream all day because I have other stuff to do. Like that's one of the things that's fun about a major league sports game is that you can just watch for a couple hours and then go to bed. I like some obviously take longer than others, but it's not an all day thing, and I don't think it should be an all day thing.
So if you had to pull one aspect from each show, like like what's your favorite thing that Arnold does? What's your favorite thing Worlds does? Like all four shows.
Hmm.
Which like for me, it would be like I think the Arnold's does. I know they do lighting great, but I think they do the scale the best out of anybody. I think they manage to fit a lot of people in an arena, and everything still looks big. I think
Hmm.
Worlds does the pacing the best. I mean, they also have they have the title that's just something to have innate, but as far as
Hmm.
the pacing and the production value, and I've heard they treat the athletes great, they treat the fans great. I love that one. The Rogue, I think they do the best in terms of the events, in terms of
Hmm.
keeping them cool looking. Um, while keeping the scale, if that makes sense. Brian obviously does the coolest events, but he loses the scale.
Hmm.
If I would take anything from Smo, I would take Brian Shaw.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would take Brian Shaw. I would put him in cuffs and I would drag him and I would be like, "You are in charge of this show now. You have $300,000. Do whatever the hell you want. I'm not
Yeah.
stopping."
I saw a comment on the Laws and Liz live stream one time where it was, would you rather have Darren Sadler picking the events and Brian Shaw picking the weights, or Brian Shaw picking the events and Darren Sadler picking the weights? And I think that that's an interesting question either way. And I just thought that was
Yeah.
kind of funny. You guys can drop in the comments which one you'd prefer. I know my answer. I'd have Darren picking the events, Brian picking the weights, because I trust Brian's weights to be more challenging than Darren. Obviously, if you told Darren, be like, hey, you want it to be heavier, he's not dumb, so he's not going to make it weird. But just in general, Giants Live versus Strongest Man on Earth weights, I think it's a funny discussion. And I think, honestly, my answer would probably be pretty similar to yours. I think that the scale and light, so the actual, like, presentation, scale, lighting, that kind of stuff of the Arnold, I would take the lineup from World's Strongest Man. I love a larger lineup. I think that's one of the best things about Smo is that it was 16 guys and not just 10. Because I don't think we're at a stage in the sport where you can cut it down to 10 guys and not be missing a ton. So minimum of 16, if not 20. Because I think that sometimes, depending on who's all healthy, you could go up to 20. But I would go a much larger lineup because that's one of the only things that I like about World's Strongest Man. Maybe even like the heats. I like a little prelim final action. I don't know if I'd separate it into groups, but I think I like the idea of a start with a huge lineup after the first day you go down to the top 10, something like that.
Trim them.
So I like the prelim final situation that World's Strongest Man has, and you got to go with the equipment for Rogue. I mean, like I said, if I was to build one of the later episodes that we want to do on the show is designing our own perfect strongman competition. Like if we were to give like a dream show, what would it be? And like I was going through some of my favorite stuff, and like half of the events are all stuff that's been at the Rogue because it's all so cool. Like my favorite event, Stones over the hitching post. You got the yoke into the log, like the yoke they use at the Rogue is really cool. The Tower of Power is awesome. Wheel of Pain is awesome. All this kind of stuff that you don't see anywhere else. And obviously Arnold and the Invitational both being run by Rogue, there's some similarity there because you got Steve Slater on the team when it comes to designing all this stuff. But I think I'd definitely go with the equipment for Smo, or for the equipment for Rogue Invitational. And then if we're going to include Strongest Man on Earth, it would definitely be the pacing. I like the pacing of Strongest Man on Earth. When I was there, it didn't feel like anything was taking too long in between. It was kind of quick back to back with just enough time you could go take a little break. I think that would be a good mix between, because they all do their own stuff really, really well. And I love watching all the major shows. Like, this is not to say that I don't enjoy watching any of them. I just think that a little bit of dead space being cut out and a little bit more beer, and we'd be well on our way to a more entertaining sport.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, make the comp longer. I love multiple day competitions. I would love it if the Arnold was 3-day, or if Smo was 3-day, or if Rogue was 3-day. Give the athletes more time to rest, but do the men and the women and give a proper break in between instead of shoving the women in the gaps in between the men. Make it their
Mm-hmm.
own thing so I don't miss it.
That's one of the things I meant to mention earlier about the Rogue that I like is the head-to-head events between men on one side, women on the other side, because it really showcases, in a lot of aspects, some of the events it's like, oh, the women are way better at this than the men. Like, proportionately to each other, yeah, the weight is going to be lighter for the women's side, and all the incels in the comments can be like, I did that when I was 18 years old, actually, when they probably didn't. But it's like, yeah, they're going to be lighter, but proportionally to the men, a lot of the women are way better at some of the events. You take Inez on any overhead, and she is way better than any of the men, excluding maybe one or two. She's the queen. And you take Olga Lyashuk in any moving event, or some static events even too, like throwing. She has a women's bag record. It's awesome. Like, there's so many things that are to be enjoyed on both sides. And I don't think making the women a sideshow is going to help any of that, because a lot of people want to watch the women's side of the sport too. A lot of people are big fans of the women's side of the sport, as they should be.
They put in just as much effort. And in fact, I mean, my fiance competes in strongman. I think they put in a little bit more because, like, there's a societal pressure not to get too into the weeds, but I'm okay looking like an ogre. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? I'm fine with it. But there's a societal pressure on my fiance to stay 5'2", 125.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, dude, that's the lightest women's weight class. You got 10 people in the state of North Carolina who compete in that. Good luck
Right.
finding them.
Yeah, I don't
Uh,
know if you saw Rebecca Roberts made an Instagram post
yeah, that
recently
was
talking about how some of the hardships she's been through. And phenomenal athlete. I met her at OSG one year. She's like the nicest person that I've ever met, and she's so strong. It's just there is that added layer of difficulty when it comes to promoting the women's side of the sport because somehow we're still at a stage of sport in especially the US where people just don't take it seriously, and it
yeah.
is as frustrating as it is for me to watch it happen. I can't even imagine how frustrating it would be for any of the female athletes. It's just nasty all around, but I think that the Rogue is taking a huge step in the right direction by including them on an equal playing ground, on an equal playing field, because I think that's something that the women's side of the sport really needs. And sometimes, like one of the things that Lucas Hatton always talks about on his channel is that the North America's Strongest Woman stream and the video on his channel has more views than the men's side. And I think that's an awesome aspect of the sport that a lot more people are tuning into the women's side of the sport because it has the potential to be so much more popular because it's like, yeah, big strong men is one thing, but you don't see big strong women very often, so it's even more of a spectacle, even more unique, and has some more
Yeah.
charm to it in that way
Well,
sometimes.
and there's the gap is smaller, I feel like, on the women's side between the elite and the amateur, where it's like, oh my gosh, I met her at dinner. Jackie Rhodes, who won
Hmm.
the Arnold Pro-Am this year.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm assuming she's not going to watch this, but I saw her at Schmidt's after dinner. Congrats again. Uh, but she's strong as shit.
Yeah.
She's strong,
Yeah, dude.
and it's like, dude, you throw her into that lineup, into at Rogue, you throw her in wherever, she's not gonna get killed.
No.
Yeah, she's not gonna beat Inez, but Inez or Olga, yeah, that's because they're terrifying people. And when I look in my
Yeah,
rear
it takes
mirror of my
some.
car, I'm not afraid there's a car behind me. I'm afraid Inez is in my rearview mirror.
Yeah. Picking
Um,
up the back of your car.
yeah, but like it's you watch North America's Strongest Women, and I mean, Sam competes in that.
Yeah.
You get the top of the top women still have to compete in those shows, and it sucks they have to compete because there's less opportunity for them. Like there's very few women who get to go to Giants Live other than like the Deadlift World Champion, stuff like that.
Hmm.
There's not that in between. And so you get people who are actually competing and training against the elite women so they know what they're getting into there. And I think it makes the Rogue better because it's like,
Yeah.
hey, I don't know who's going to be in this lineup next year. You watch the Rogue men's, yeah, pretty good guess who's going to be in there next year. The
I
Rogue
agree.
women's, it's like, dude, half the field could be changed next year. I mean,
Yeah.
if depending on who shows up, half the field could be changed because someone could kill it at Europe's strongest woman or the America's strongest woman or a different pro am show.
Yeah, it's so competitive on the women's side of the sport, and we can talk about the women's competitions in a different episode because they deserve just as much airtime as the men's competitions do. But I don't think that I have anything else major to say on this topic. And you got any other thoughts from you, Brandon?
No, I just want to say, we're not trying to be complainers. We appreciate all of the majors. We're not trying to be like, oh, these are bad, this is bad. Everyone knows, if you know Strongman, you know what the pros are of each show. Um, this is just more like, hey, World's Strongest Man doesn't suck. It's a really good show. It's an awesome production. There's just a couple things that we think are wrong with it.
Yeah,
But this show doesn't stink. None of these are all awesome shows. These are all super cool. Thank you so much to everyone who puts them on. I can't imagine how much effort goes into that. Um, we're not trying to be negative Nancy's at all.
yeah, things don't get improved unless you bring up things to improve about these shows. And I think that's one of the things that Worlds over the past couple of years, it seems like they've been listening to the fans for quite a few
Yeah,
things. Like the Stone Off is gone, thank
they
God.
took out the break day too.
Yeah, yeah, and so there is potential for these things to be fixed, but we just gotta make our voices heard. Not to be corny, but make our voices
Yeah,
heard on topics like this. So maybe it reaches the right ears and things can go in the direction that people want for the sport. So with that, I think that just about concludes today's episode. Thank you guys again for watching. I'm having so much fun making these episodes. I know Brandon is right there with me. And if there's anything that you guys want covered in a future episode, please feel free to let us know. You can DM me on the Sort of Strongman Pod Instagram. I'm having a lot of fun over there creating all the videos that I've been making for you guys. And any closing thoughts, Brandon?
no, just have a great day, everybody.
Alrighty. Thank you guys.